In a small village nestled against the verdant slopes of a mountain, lived a man who bore a long, winding scar, like a rugged trail etched across his left cheek. That scar was not merely a mark of an old accident. It was a silent story, a testament to miraculous survival, and a profound lesson about the value of things that seem like the worst. The man, with pensive eyes hidden beneath thick lashes, lived a simple life. He worked diligently in the rice paddies, his calloused hands nurturing the young shoots as they reached for the sky. In the evenings, he would often sit alone on his porch, watching the gentle moonlight spill into the peaceful valley. The scar on his face stood out even more starkly in the moonlight, an indelible mark of the past. The villagers knew about the scar, but few dared to ask about the story behind it. They had only vaguely heard that it was the result of a terrible accident many years ago, when he was a young man, full of enthusiasm and dreams. In those days, he and his friends had gone into the forest to log timber. While sawing down a large, ancient tree, a branch unexpectedly snapped and fell, striking him. Everything happened so quickly. In an instant, he lay motionless on the cold earth, blood streaming down his face. His friends were terrified and hurriedly carried him back to the village. The days that followed were the darkest in his life. He lay bedridden, suffering both physically and emotionally. The wound on his face throbbed, but the pain in his heart was far greater. He wondered why this misfortune had befallen him, why life could be so cruel. He looked at the shattered reflection in a broken mirror, saw a disfigured face, and an overwhelming sense of despair washed over him. Time passed, and the wound on his face gradually healed. But the scar remained, a constant reminder of the horrific accident years ago. He felt self-conscious and insecure about his appearance. He avoided interacting with people, fearing curious gazes and whispered comments. He retreated into his lonely shell, closing his heart off from the outside world. Then one day, a stranger appeared in the village. It was a blind old man, thin and frail, with a weathered face but eyes that radiated kindness and wisdom. The old man went from house to house, asking for a little water and food. When he reached the man's house, he stopped for quite a while. The man was surprised. No stranger had ever lingered at his small home for so long. He invited the old man inside and poured him a warm cup of tea. As they talked, the old man asked him about his life, about his joys and sorrows. The man hesitated for a moment and then told him about the accident years ago, about the scar on his face and the insecurities he had endured. The old man listened attentively, without interrupting. When the man finished speaking, the old man was silent for a moment and then said gently, "Young man, the scar on your face may seem like an unsightly mark, but have you ever considered that it might also be a blessing?" The man looked at the old man in surprise, not understanding what he meant. The old man continued, "You survived a terrible accident? Isn't that a miracle in itself? This scar is proof of your resilience, of your strong will to live. It reminds you of what you've been through, of the difficulties you've overcome. It's a part of you, your own unique story." The old man's words were like a breath of fresh air blowing into the withered soul of the man. He had never looked at his scar this way before. He had always considered it a misfortune, something ugly that needed to be hidden. But the old man had shown him a different perspective, a deeper meaning. The old man also told him about other people in life, people who also carried scars, not just scars on their bodies, but also scars in their hearts. They had gone through losses and suffering, but they had not given up. They had learned to accept those scars, to see them as a part of their lives, and to rise stronger. The conversation with the blind old man stirred the man's heart. He began to think about the old man's words. He looked back at his life, and he saw not only suffering, but also good things. He had a loving family, sincere friends, and a stable job. He had survived the accident, had lived, and continued to exist. Perhaps this scar was not a curse, but a gift, a reminder of the value of life. From that day on, he began to change the way he viewed himself and his scar. He no longer tried to hide it. He held his head high, more confident in his interactions with others. He realized that true beauty lies not in appearance, but in the soul, in strength and compassion. He began to participate in village activities, helping those in need. He told them his story about the scar and the lesson he had learned. He wanted to inspire them, to show them that no matter how difficult life might be, they could still overcome it if they had faith and perseverance. Time passed, and the scar on his face was no longer something that made him feel self-conscious. It became a part of who he was, a symbol of resilience and kindness. The villagers no longer looked at him with curiosity or pity, but instead with respect and admiration. They called him the man with the miraculous scar, the one who had turned a mark of suffering into a source of strength and hope for the entire community. Many years later, when the blind old man returned to the village, the man ran out to greet him with a radiant smile on his face. He embraced the old man warmly, expressing his deep gratitude. The old man smiled kindly, patted his head, and said, "You've understood the meaning of the scar now." The man nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He understood that sometimes the worst things can bring the most valuable lessons. The scar on his face had not only saved his life in a literal sense, but had also redeemed his soul, helping him find the true meaning of life. It reminded him that even in the darkest of times, there is always light and hope if we know how to see and appreciate what we have. That scar, in the end, had become an indispensable part of the beautiful story of his life.